All right, I'll get us started now. It's 101. So welcome everyone. My name is Claire Ladd and I'm the Programs and Services Manager at the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, or MNN. Thanks so much for joining us today. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we dig into the webinar. The recording and the slides from today's webinar will be emailed to you shortly following the webinar, so please keep an eye on your email for that. And additionally, if you have any technical difficulties today, please submit them to us via the chat anytime. And you can also submit questions to us via the chat, and we will also open up at the end for questions. I want to give a little background about us here at MNN. Our three goals at MNN are to strengthen the nonprofit sector through advocacy, public awareness of our sector, and capacity building services. This webinar is part of our capacity building offerings and is part of our webinar series. So please stay tuned for future topics in the coming weeks and months and reach out to us if you have any topics you'd like to see. Our efforts are made possible by our more than 600 member organizations. So to those of you who are members, thank you for your partnership. And if you have not yet joined the network but would like to take advantage of all the networking opportunities, trainings, and cost savings on various professional services, please visit massnonprofitnet.org/join to find out more. So today's presenter, Diane Remin, is the president of MajorDonors.com. Named among the top 25 fundraising consultants by Philanthropy Media in 2016, Diane founded MajorDonors.com 12 years ago to help small to mid-sized nonprofits boost their revenues with an eye toward major gifts. The company offers a unique performance-based major gift program, provides campaign counsel, and emphasizes donor retention. An active major gift solicitor herself, Diane has served on nonprofit boards for the past 20 years. As she likes to say, giving is good for your health. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Diane.
Thank you, Claire, and welcome everyone. I will go ahead and share my screen. Oops. And here we are. It's wonderful to have you here, being interested in how to set up the donor visit, because if we can't get out there and be talking to our donors, major gift success is going to be mighty challenging. What we're going to be looking at today are actually two types of visits. One expected, which is a visit where you're planning to present a gift opportunity or make an ask. And the other is maybe you just want to get to know your donor better, and I didn't want to overlook that. So we talk about both types. With the arrival of COVID, we are now doing major gift work on Zoom as in person. I certainly encourage you to visit in person if you are comfortable and if your donor is comfortable. And then you can see the rest of today's agenda. There's a little bonus at the back, which is for these engagement calls, the kinds of questions you might ask. So here we go. I always begin my webinars with 3 slides because I think they penetrate everything that we do as fundraisers. One is to be aware of what donors want, and Penelope Burke, who has been collecting donor surveys for decades to the point that she has tens of thousands of donor responses, finds that donors consistently want 3 things. And this is independent of literally how you get a donor visit, which I promise we'll get to. But I think it's important to keep in mind always that donors want to be part of a big idea that is important to them, to know what you're going to do with their money, and to know that you did it before you ask them again, and then to be thanked promptly and personally. So I just want to highlight the importance of thanking. Some donors say it's the most important communication they receive from the organization. Now there's a thought. For those of you who are more foundation oriented, assuming you're here to set up an individual visit because you want to move into more robustly individual donor major gift work, there is a body of research that supports the fact that individuals give based on emotion. It doesn't mean they don't look at your financials or data, but the driver of individual giving is emotion, which is why storytelling has become so popular in the nonprofit space, right? For the last number of years, there's multiple sessions about storytelling, and it is certainly important that you be able to tell your organization's story and communicate with donors in a way that they can picture where their gifts are going, etc. But the story that doesn't always get focused on, and it is central to major gift work, is the donor story. So that's really where we're headed typically when we're setting up donor visits. Because the big question for major gift work is, how does the donor story entwine or overlap with the organization's mission vision? Because when you get that, that's when you are likely to get a gift. So just suggesting we keep those things in mind as we march forward into technique. As I said, I am going to be talking about two different kinds of visits that you might want to be setting up. One is typically done as a call, but absolutely can be done as a visit. I call it the engagement call. I thank iMarketSmart for putting this information out there. I've adapted it from their work. You can use the engagement call if you had a major donor who you'd like to know better, you're building the relationship. It's a wonderful stewardship tool, but it also can be used. For example, you've done a wealth screening and you have a whole bunch of smaller donors and you see that they have strong financial indicators, and maybe you even see they are philanthropic at much larger levels at larger places. So first time out, you may want to learn more about them, so then you can come back and present some initiatives that you know they'll be particularly interested in. These are some of the major uses of the engagement call. The donor visit, where you are planning to present opportunities to give, hopefully with the donor's permission, when you reach that point of the conversation, you actually can use when you have existing donors who are already major donors and you want to be looking at increasing their gifts. When you know you're only going to have one chance at a particular donor, maybe it's a referral of a very sophisticated person, they're super busy, they're hard to get to, and they're going to be expecting you to ask. And I will try to point out during this webinar when I'm saying something that is common across, say, the field and is a little more potentially controversial, which is, can you actually ask first-time donors? I'm going to suggest that if you are using a philosophy that is permission-based and meeting donors where you are, you can. But if you're not comfortable with that, certainly you can use the engagement call as a starter. Not everyone agrees with that philosophy about first-time donors. I do suggest you check out the work of forimpact.org if you'd like to know more about that. I do follow their practices. I found them to be very successful. So in summary, what I suggest you consider is certainly asking any longstanding donors and subscribers for a gift to have in your mind. I'm setting up this donor visit to present an opportunity to make a difference, versus maybe you want to use the engagement call for certainly first-time donors where you really don't know anything about them, where it would be weird to kind of go, oh, all right, let's now go ask this person for a gift. They just gave us a gift for the very first time. So I'm going to start with what I'm calling the engagement call. As I said, in the back of this presentation is sort of a bonus section, are the kinds of questions that you might ask during this call. But right now we're going to focus on how do we get this call. So to be clear, this call is 100% about learning about what is important to your donor. I'm going to use the word donor to cover, it could be a member, it could be a subscriber, it could be whoever it may be, versus you talking about your organization and its programs. That's not what this call is. We're really trying to get what is important to this person from a values perspective. What is important to this person from a philanthropic perspective? Where does your organization fit in all that? So how do we do it? My slides are packed with text, and I understand that, yes, it's nice to have visual slides, but I want to make sure that you actually have scripts. So thus, my slides. Essentially, what you're doing is you're introducing yourself. So I'll say it for those of you who do best by audio. Let's pretend I call and you answer the phone, and we'll talk about what happens when the donor doesn't, or whoever you're calling doesn't. I will get there. Hi, Susan. This is Diane. I'm calling from ABC Nonprofit. I want to be clear up front. I am not calling today to ask you for a donation. And then I'm going to go right into the call. I'm reaching out to long-standing donors like you to say thank you and learn more about what's important to you so we can make sure you continue to have a rewarding experience with us. To begin, I'm wondering what inspired that very first gift of yours of $100 on December 2019? Okay. So I'm just going to march right in there. Now, I can start marching right in there and I can get stopped, which is fine. Let me jump, sorry. What if the donor says, stops me, right? They'll stop you if it's not a good time. Offer tomorrow at the same time and then work it out. Donors wondering what this is about. You're pretty much going to repeat that you're not asking for a gift. Length, 10 minutes. I'm already satisfied with you, or almost anything else. You kind of want to flip it and say, that's wonderful, Susan. You're exactly the kind of person we'd like to get to know better and feeling great about their experience with us. And we'll talk a little more about kind of taking whatever the pushback might be and turning it into a reason to talk to them. So that gives you a sense of how to answer some of the objections to this kind of call. What if you don't get them on the phone, you get a voicemail? We're pretty much going to repeat the script that I just did, with the addition of letting them know that you're going to try them back again. And when that might be, you're going to give them your number. They are unlikely to call. And after you try them again, whenever you said you were going to try them, you can try an email if you're doing a voice email series. And we'll talk about, both for this kind of engagement call and setting up a visit where you're going to ask for a gift, the kind of series you can run. But this is the voicemail email example. You're always telling them what you want. You're always telling them the time. You're actually giving 2 dates and 2 times. We'll talk a little more about that later too. And that's that set. And what we're finding out in the field, and what I'm hearing out in the field, because I'm not out in the field a ton, but I very much pay attention to the people who are out there making lots of donor calls. And what we're hearing is that texting is increasingly effective. And I know some people are feeling like, oh, our donors are older, or donors are this, or our donors are that. I'm going to suggest that you try it and test, unless the donor has already told you not to do that. You certainly are always following your donor communication preferences. What I think helps with the text is if in the voicemail, you let them know that's what you're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and send you a text, thinking that might be an easier way to figure out how to connect. So positioning the text as a convenience for the donor, and then you can text follow up. I'll stop there and say, any questions about the engagement call? Claire will kindly take a look at the chat. I will leave time for questions at the end as well, but that's a kind of stopping point before we go into the next section. Any questions so far? Looks like not. Oh, I see one. Claire, do you have that? I see a couple.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first question is, many times you don't have the donor's cell phone number and therefore cannot text. What then?
Right. Good question. You have to use what you have. So if you have to rely on email, you have to rely on email. You can also, in an email, invite the donor to give you additional information. And I also want to emphasize the need to balance the friction of gathering information and not having information, right? If you want to do major gift work, having information gets to be really important, things like telephone numbers. So yes, it is true that if you ask for a phone number, you may repress response some amount. But the question, what is the cost of that when then you don't have the phone number? And again, I'm going to say, I think you need to test within your own organization. So certainly my mantra is always do the best you can with what you have. Do the best you can with what you have. Was there another question?
Yes, thank you. So another question was, do you purposefully not say up front, is this a good time for you to chat for 10 minutes?
Correct. I purposely do not. I purposely just go, once I get them, I just go run right into the call. They will stop you if it's not a good time. They will jump in and just, you can't just like blindly speak. You do need to listen to the person at the other end of the line. And if they stop you, that's fine. Then say, oh, no problem. And I suggest just offering up the same time tomorrow, because at least you caught them, and then go from there. They say, oh, no, let's do whatever. That's fine. So yes, I do suggest, and this is according to a model that iMarketSmart created and their clients are using with success, that you just keep going. Okay, that I can just see the number of chats. So it looks like we answered both questions.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Just for fun, before we go into this next section, which is about planning that visit where you are intending to present a giving opportunity, just for fun, put into chat what are the odds of you getting a gift once you've set up the visit, right? What's the percentage chance that once you go through the work of setting up the visit that you're going to get a gift? Let's see what you all think. Is it 10%? Is it 100%? What percent? I see a couple of, yeah, I can look at those. Right. A gift at any time period based on your visit. So I see a 60, I see a 75, I see a 75, I see a 99, I see a 60. So the research, I see a 90, I see a 50, I see a 60, I see much lower. Okay, thank you. So the research seems to point, it'll depend on your organization, anywhere from 60 to 85%. So putting in the work to set up the visit ends up really being worth it, because it's odds on bet that you are going to get a gift. It may not be what you're asking for, but it is going to be significant versus where the donor started previously. So just want to put that in there as a little inspiration. You'll note the cross out of language, get an appointment with the donor to ask them for money. Yuck, who would want to do that? And this is the slide off of which I spent a couple of minutes on my soapbox. Thank you for allowing me to do this, to really talk about what I think fundraising is all about. Because I hear so often that, oh my gosh, go ask someone for a gift. Like, who wants to go do that? And I think that is because so many people have donor visits framed as some sort of painful extraction exercises. And who would want to do that? I wouldn't. How I got here today, why am I before you? Because I used to be in the business world, and I started volunteering, and I ended up on a board, and I ended up at a capital campaign, and I had these fabulous donor conversations. I went, wow, I changed careers. If you don't feel like presenting the donor with opportunities to give where they can see their impact that match their values and beliefs as a gift, you aren't going to want to go do the work. And that's why, from a language perspective, you see me languaging the way I do around presenting opportunities, looking at how the stories intertwine. I have a client who says, before he makes any kind of call for a visit, to set up, to go to whatever, he just sits and says to himself, I am giving the donor a gift. I am giving the donor a gift. And you are. End of my soapbox, and onward to go into the technique. So what is the overall format of this call? It's still say who you are and where you're from slowly and clearly. It's I'm reaching out today to schedule a visit to talk with you about ABC nonprofit, suggesting 2 dates and 2 times. You don't want to have the visit over the phone if you can possibly avoid it. And the goal is to get to the calendar. That is the victory. You see this fellow with all kinds of calendars there with, 3 cheers. We got him to his calendar. We don't care about those dates and times other than you need to be available for them. Now we're going to look at a couple of different scenarios. How do you set up a visit with a donor you know already versus how do you set up a visit with a donor that you don't know well or visiting with for the first time? Again, urging in-person visits, you need to be comfortable, or don't even put it out there. And then you need to see if the donor is comfortable in this day and age. And my note, once again, if you're smaller and you don't have the staff to go travel far and wide, yes, Zoom has made major gift work possible for you. The key for the in-person visit is to suggest home or office, wherever's most convenient. Right? We're always suggesting what's convenient for the donor. And then the 2 dates, 2 times, although 3 of everything, right, applies to so many things in life and fundraising, right? 333, it's a great number usually. Someone determined, and I could not find the original research, but we know from practice that 2 dates and 2 times is enough to get the person to look at their calendar, and that's what we want. And that's why I think the 2 dates and 2 times work. And then you see the Zoom backup. If they're pushing back, you can go for Zoom. And the sentence that I pulled from the language that's being put out there by people in the field that is very effective is we've had many thoughtful conversations over Zoom lately. That language is effective because it normalizes Zoom and lets the donor know they're going to have a meaningful experience. Again, if you're going to go right for the Zoom visit, then you just begin with that. If it's a donor that you previously visited in person, you of course want to acknowledge that. What about donors you don't know well or at all? The trick is to, quote, get them ready for your contact. And again, same rules going to apply. If you don't have phone and you have to do all email, you have to do all email. But I would certainly along the way ask them for if they're willing to give you additional information just to make it easier for you to support them and understand them better, etc. But in any case, whether it's via snail mail, via email, or even via text, if that's how, let's say, the ED usually communicates with this person, we're going to have the executive director or the referral source send a short note, just a short note, basically letting them know you're going to be contacting them so they can be on the lookout for your call. If you're an ED, maybe the board chair refers you in, or you can feel free to call directly. I want to be clear that as a board member, I always felt fine just calling donors directly, because to me, donors aren't cold. They have a relationship with us, especially donors who've been giving for a while. So some of it's personal preference. EDs can always call directly. Everybody wants to talk to the ED pretty much. But if you're more comfortable being pre-introduced, this is how to do it. You see my tip. What we've really been doing forever in this industry is using very internal titles externally with donors. And finally, some folks are starting to research this. Dr. Russell James, for one. And again, not surprisingly, what do donors say? They say yuck to development director, chief development officer, director of advancement. On the what they like side, less clear, and his research was focused on complex planned giving. So they were using words like a financial whatever that doesn't apply to your basic sort of major gift work. What I suggest is try a title with the word donor in it, like director of donor engagement or donor guide or donor something. Again, the industry, the nonprofit industry has kind of not figured this out yet. So I just want to kind of elevate it. I think you're at a disadvantage when you try to reach out to donors as a director of development, for example, because donors have said so. So now what happens? And again, we're assuming we have a phone number, and we'll talk about non-phone numbers. Once you've had the referral, and the idea is, let's say you agree with the ED, they're going to send out 10 of these. And then you're going to follow up with the 10 and you're going to let them know. And then they're going to do another 10 or 20. So there needs to be a process so that you or whomever is going to be doing the follow up with the donor follows up within the week of the donor receiving the message that someone's going to contact them. So that's an internal process. The nice thing about working off a referral, and even if it's all email, is all you're saying is, hi, here I am. I'm the person that you heard about. I'm calling to suggest we get together to talk about ABC nonprofit at your home or office, whichever is more convenient, and give them 2 days and 2 times. If you have to leave a voicemail where you can reach me, and then you can either offer to call them again at a time and a place, or send a text. And if you say, I'm going to send you a text, as that might be more convenient, then shoot over the text. Smiling matters. So, duration. Again, there's no science about this, but I have both experienced myself and heard so many clients talk about the donor appears to vanish, or newer donor never responds for months and months and months. And then one fine day, aha, the donor answers you. I just had it happen myself. 7 months went by and I thought, okay, person has vanished into space. But I, kept at it, and there they were. And it can be, they're just busy. There was a health crisis. There was whatever. But in any case, now they are ready. So the lack of response is not a sign of lack of interest necessarily at all. At all. Really suggest you certainly go for 12 months, and you're welcome to go longer. Again, there's no scientific evidence I've ever seen about this other than persistence pays. What I'm suggesting here is that you work in a series, and that you try 3 times, that you wait, try again, maybe wait longer, and then go to like every 90 days or so. Here are a couple tips. At month 3, even if you've been referred by the ED, let's say, you might see, let's say using LinkedIn, if you can find another connector. Hopefully you have one of those subscriptions, worth it, where you can then LinkedIn message the person and say, hey, and see if they'd be willing to provide a connection so that the donor hears about you from another voice. Another tip that I actually have only seen this put out there once, and I will be curious to learn how people do with it, but it makes sense to me, is to change things up at, let's say, month 6. Meaning, as opposed to asking for a visit yet again, send some sort of compelling content only, sort of video preferred piece. Video, I say, because likely the donor will open it, more likely for the better open rate. Could be just a casual, anything, maybe from a program person, or if you can do your people benefiting from the gift person, or whatever it may be. If that's going to hold you up, send an article, send in anything that is just content. So someone has started experimenting with this and did find that by switching up the communication, a couple of people actually then did respond. So this is anecdotal, but I think worth a shot if you're 6 months out. When I say a series, if you have phone and you have text and you have emails, you can try all that. If you only have an address, you can send a handwritten note and ask them for a way to contact you. You can send an email if that's all you have. And again, part of it would be, I would be asking them if they'd be willing to share a better way to contact them. Or you can just try to be setting up the visit on email if that is all you have. So when I say do not default to email, get on the phone, if you have the phone number. And I know I don't have a phone like that anymore. No one I know has a phone like that anymore, but the picture's so cute, I include it. So that's the kind of sequencing. And that's why you want to keep in mind that it really does take persistence to get these visits. But at the other end of the rainbow, when you get one, you are very likely to get a gift that's significantly higher than where the donor was previously. When we think about the entire major gift process, most people focus on the ask, right? Oh my gosh, ask. But really, once you're comfortable, once you've had donor conversations, the challenging part of the process is setting up the visit. So these are ways to kind of help you diversify your approach. We say test, and keep at it. And that's what the people who are very successful in the industry are doing. They are just keeping at it. The last major piece here is, okay, what happens when you're getting pushback from your donors, let's say, when you are trying to set up this visit? You're not saying to them, I'm not going to ask you for a gift. That's not what you're not saying that at all. You're asking to have a conversation about the nonprofit. So here are some overarching strategies. I'll point a couple of them out. One is say something, respond with something. Test, try some of this is about what you're comfortable with. Some of this is about what you see works with your donors or your members or your whomever you are setting up visits with. But the important point is to not just bail when someone gives you any pushback at all. A couple that I'd like to point out that are potentially less obvious, I think the advice one is pretty common. You hear that the donor is already, their philanthropy is planned for the year. And this one, some of these overlap, is going to tie with the concept of flipping the objective into a positive. So if you hear that a donor's philanthropy is set for the year, you might say something like, you always want to be affirmative when you can. Thank you for being such a philanthropic person, Claire. You're exactly the kind of person that we really want to speak with, whose advice has proven so valuable. We'd love to hear what you think. I think you'll find the work important. How about, and when I say how about, I'm always leading into my 2 dates and two dates times and home or office, wherever is more convenient. So it's this idea of kind of flipping. It is that almost no matter what they say, you can often say back, that's exactly why we want to talk to you. And that adds a little bit of an element of surprise, because sometimes I think they think this objection is going to have stopped you. And it really typically does move the conversation forward. The other one I want to point out is normalizing the objection, meaning we hear this from other people. It doesn't mean we shouldn't talk to you. So many of our top donors say the very same thing. And what we found, this is using a little bit of a technique, many people say, and what we found, and we've used the found to get us to where we want to go as the next step. And what we found is that we have amazing conversations with people like you who are supporting a similar organization already. Both of us find it really valuable. We've gotten great feedback. How about? So what I'd like to do now, because what follows this slide are 4 pages of specific pushback examples. Like, can you just put something in the mail or what have you? What I'd like you to do now in chat is give me a couple of pushbacks that you've encountered or that you can imagine encountering, and I'd like to answer them. So pushbacks or objections that you have encountered or that you can imagine encountering, and let's look at how we might use these, blend these, etc. All right, I got one here. Let's see. I really have no time. I'm not sure whether you mean you're busy or you don't have any time right now, but let's assume you mean you're busy. I would say, I get that you're busy, Ruth. Busy people like you are exactly who we want to talk to. We have such meaningful conversations. You're really tuned in. We'd love to hear what you have to say about what we're working on. It's important work. I know you'll think so. I only need 20 minutes. How about? All right. So for the busy person, we're going to ask for 20 minutes. But again, it's this idea of, yeah, you're busy. We want to talk to you just 20 minutes. You'll find it valuable. We'll find it valuable. Wherever it's most convenient, home or office, let's do it. The price of everything is going up. Okay. Yes, that's one I haven't heard. The price of everything is going up. That is very true, Maria. It makes the kind of work we do around cause that much more critical. We'd love to share with you what we have in mind and see what you think. How is? Right? Any other ones? Oh, you're welcome. Any other pushbacks you've ever received, you could imagine receiving when you go to set up a donor visit? Okay, no? All right. So I'm not going to detail the next 4 pages. I'm just going to look at some of the headlines with you so you know what you can be prepared for. Timing, you just handle by that. Timing is one of the easiest ones. No matter what they're doing with their timing, somebody's getting married, they're out of the country, you just make a time that works for them. Can you put something in the mail? No, we want to have a conversation. Are you going to ask me for money? Tip, don't say yes, don't say no. I'm too busy. We did. I don't want to meet in person. Can't we just do this over the phone? I already gave. I know what you do. Great. We've already decided where we're giving. We've committed. We have philanthropic commitments for the next 3 years, and our budget is exhausted. Thank you for being so philanthropic. I already give to. I'll put a check in the mail. So you have this information here at your fingertips. As you do this more and more, you'll be able to group together and some of the replies so that you're combining thank you and making sure the donor knows that you heard and that it's the cause is important, they'll like the information, etc. And we really want to talk to them and see what they think and can they give us 30 minutes. So always get asked, what happens if the donor pretty much insists on having the visit by phone. There are some donors who are major donors and they will only talk to you on the phone. I know a number of major gift officers, most major gift officers who are doing this full time, certainly at larger institutions, they have donors like this. So if you need to go to phone, if you've tried your responses and the donor really wants to have the visit by phone, then that's what you're going to do. And again, this is about setting up the visit, not having the visit. But I will say that if you're going to have the visit by phone, your case needs to be well prepared. And by that, I mean, you need to keep it simple. You do not want to talk about more than 3 initiatives. I don't care if you do 20 things. You cannot give a donor a list of stuff on the phone. And I would suggest you never want to give the donor a list of stuff. And you always want to focus on 3 things, but okay. You want to repeat as you go. You want to use very few numbers because hearing numbers and understanding them on the phone it's very difficult. I see a chat. Yes.
Yeah, Ruth is asking, can you differentiate between the content of the visit if you are really there to get to know them and get their advice and input versus a visit asking for a gift?
Yes. I think that I'm going to make 3 differentiators, actually. One is, as you said there, that it's an engagement visit or call, and all you want to do is get to know them. And so you are asking them questions without grilling them about their philanthropic interests and what's important to them, etc. And that's that. And the goal is then to set up a visit after that engagement visit, where you might say something like, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing. I've learned so much about you. What I'd like to suggest is, how about I come back and share a couple of the priorities that we have or initiatives we're working on that coincide with the beliefs and interests that you've shared with me today. How about we set something up, and now you might go out like a month or so and give them 2 days and 2 times. So that's one. The advice input versus asking for a gift actually often get blended. And the trick is, or not trick, but the approach is, I use something from an organization that I've mentioned called For Impact, called the donor engagement tool that exists to drive the conversation. So the donor conversation, where again I'm potentially going to ask for a gift, starts like up at 30,000 feet, and we get on the same page about vision, and I understand from their seat how that vision plays into them and their life. Then maybe at 14,000 feet, I'm presenting 3 funding areas, and I'm asking them, is there one of particular interest? And I'm having a conversation then about down lower to the ground here about what we're working on, and I am getting their advice. And during these visits, a number of times donors are going to say very interesting things that you take back and may result in shifts and changes and additions and subtractions, etc. And then I'm going to ask for permission to discuss the funding plan, assuming the conversation's gone well. And by asking for permission to discuss the funding plan, I'm essentially asking for permission to discuss money. And then hopefully I have, as part of my case or whatever I'm using, a leadership giving range and my goal and examples of impacts of gifts at various levels and an ask in mind. So Typically, the advice part and the asking for a gift part come together by using a permission-based approach. Does that help, Ruth? Yes, do you try to set up the second visit? Okay, thank you. The question is, do you try to set up the second visit before you leave the first one? And now we're into the visit, the actual visit, which is fine. And the answer is absolutely yes. Do not leave a visit without a plan for the next visit. Typically, we suggest that you offer to do whatever you just did. So if you visited in person, start with in person. If you visited on Zoom, start with on Zoom. The fallback for either one is phone. Excuse me, can be phone. I'd say number one call I get from clients is, I met with John and I can't, he seemed really interested and I can't reach him again. And I'm like, did you set up a time for the next visit? No. You will be chasing. You will be chasing. I guarantee it, even if the donor is interested. Because when she eventually, after much time and effort, reaches John, he likely will be ready to talk to her and make a gift. Again, it's just people's lives are such that it's challenging to get the visit set. So yes, if you're on a visit, make sure you set up the next step before you leave. And to end and then take some more questions. When is a no a no? And the basic answer is the person is not interested in what you do, or it's a low level priority. There are some consultants out there who, if the donor says, I'm not interested, who will still go ask for their advice and see if maybe they didn't understand what it is you do. My basic premise is that is the kiss of death, is lack of caring, interest, prioritization of the work vis-a-vis major donors. I mean, the person may well continue to give you an annual gift. And the other two are if someone gave an honor or memory of, and then they tell you any of those top three, or they attended an event as a guest and they tell you any of those top three. But other than that, I'd keep going. And also the tip is to beware what I call secondhand assessments of the donor's interest. So you arrive at a place and someone on staff says, oh yeah, that donor, they're whatever they are. And it's like, oh, did the donor tell you that personally? No. There are a lot of stories out in the field of reaching out to that donor about whom some story has emerged in the organization and making great headway. Not always, but again, beware. At the back are sample questions about having the engagement call. And I end with giving is good for your health. And I'm going to stop share and take additional questions. We have another 5 minutes. If anyone has any more questions. Where's my chat? Any questions? I guess not. It looks not. Okay, then. I thank everyone for being here. I wish you well in visiting with donors. It is getting in front of donors, engaging them, and then visiting them and presenting opportunities is the pathway to major gift success. I hope each of you are leaving this session with at least one new idea that you can implement. And again, thank you for being here. Claire, you want to wrap?
Yes, thanks so much. I want to thank you, Diane, for sharing such great information with us. And thanks to everybody who joined. And just as a reminder, we'll be sending out the recording and the slides on an evaluation survey as soon as possible. So keep an eye out for that. And please complete the survey to give us feedback about the session today. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. And thank you again to Diane.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone, and be well.